Oh yeah. All right. Oh, I think so. Amanda Bates.
Welcome everybody. I'm just giving a couple of minutes to allow other people to join. There's still some people joining, so just bear with us for 1 or 2 minutes.
Oh, hello, Susan.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi there. I've only ever done Zoom with a few people.
Yep.
Is it? I can only see 4 on the screen. Is that normal, or can I make?
So are you on a tablet?
No, just my phone.
Just your phone. Okay, sometimes on a phone you can scroll kind of left or right and you'll be able to see a few more, but there's 48 people on that you definitely won't be able to see more than a few on a phone. It's the downside of the phone.
All right, I can see.
You can see. Okay, great.
Thank you.
No.
Hi, guys. Hello.
Oh gosh, I'm going to mute everybody just a sec. There we go. Okay, I think we're okay to get started. Oh, there are a couple more people in the waiting room. Let's just let them in. There we go. They're just joining. There we go. The nice round number of 50 people. Look, great. Okay, so with that, I think it's time to get started. So welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. It's lovely to see so many people. I don't know where you are. I'm in Wales, and it's absolutely tipping it down with rain. So what a perfect day to let us into poetry and paint. So my name's Sam from Eden Project Communities, and I'm joined by Tracy, my colleague, who's also helping on the call today. We're delighted to be joined by Alison and Susan, who are going to be running the session today. I think you'll be very pleased to know that I'm not running this session. You would be drawing all sorts of things if it were me. So Eden Project Communities, we ordinarily would be out there sort of travelling the UK and bringing people together where they live physically to meet up and chat about communities and making a positive difference where they live. We usually work with people that run some kind of community project, whether that's art-based or cinema-based or garden-based. Anything goes. Really, the thing that unites everybody is their drive to make where they live a better place through whatever means they choose. So it's a different world for us, a different world for us all in bringing people together online, but we're embracing this new world. We've got, many of you have probably found out about today through our Facebook page, so do keep up to date there with more events that we're running. We've got 3 running this week, in fact, and 3 most weeks. And I'll pop in the chat in a moment the link to that page where you can keep up to date. I'm just going to go through a couple of housekeeping bits for anybody that might be new to Zoom. You're probably all Zoom pros by now, we're kind of forced into this new world. But Alison and Susan, and in fact Tracy, are all sharing the same studio, and we are strictly committing to the social distancing rules, which means they are operating from 3 different devices in one big space, which sometimes means the sound is affected because of various speakers and microphones. So please do, if you can see and hear through all of that, that's great. But if the sound does get too bad for you, just let us know through the chat box. The chat box is just down here below, so I'll just write hello in there. So feel free to put any questions you like in there as we go along for Susan and Alison, and we'll feed those into them as and when is appropriate. And also feel free to introduce yourselves to each other in the box there. I'm going to take all the power I can in the world and keep everybody on mute as much as I can. That's the hosting power. I feel all powerful suddenly today. And that's because of just sound and background noise, and means that whatever's going on in your house, that's fine. And you don't need to share that with us all. And that's perfect for my house, because at some point you will definitely see a little 8-year-old pop up behind me for sure, and you won't want to hear him. So I will be keeping us all on mute. But please don't think that that means you can't speak. Anytime that you want to speak, just unmute yourself and ask a question. We're definitely not that controlling. I've said about the chat box. Zoom has this great thing. If you're using a laptop or computer, you can watch today's session in speaker view or gallery view. If you click on speaker view, you'll be able to see Alison when she's doing the demonstrations of the drawing and painting. You'll be able to see that much better in a larger view. So if you can find that on my laptop, it's the top right-hand corner. So just press which view you prefer there. We are recording the session, and that's to be able to share it back with you and with other people as well on our website that couldn't make it today. So if you don't want to be in that video, that's absolutely fine. If you could just turn your video off, and then you won't feature in that video at all. But we will be sharing the video and any notes and links that Alison and Susan share with us after today's session as well. So without any more from us, I'll hand over to Alison and Susan to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about the session, and then we'll get to introducing each other. Over to you, Alison.
Hi there. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Is that all right? So it's lovely. Thank you so much for joining us. I have to say it's a bit of a first for me doing these poetry and paint sessions via Zoom, so you'll have to bear with us. But we've had great fun getting together some fabulous ideas, so we're actually really looking forward to sharing them with you and kind of stepping into the world of poetry and painting and just seeing what we might come up with together. So yeah, welcome to my studio. I think Susan might like to say hello.
Hello everybody. Bit echoey here. Lovely to see so many people. It's great how many people you can fit into one socially distanced space if you're all living miles apart. So yes, really looking forward to this morning. We've done lots of poetry and paint workshops together with Alison from the Wordsworth Trust where I work. And this morning I thought a great quote from Wordsworth himself, "Let nature be our teacher," because we're going to be focusing on the green and the microscopic. There was a real collaborative relationship between William and Dorothy Wordsworth. And a little bit later, I'll be reading something from Dorothy's journals, which I think illustrates that, and how she, just like her brother, zooms in on the details of the natural world. Towards the end, we hope there'll be plenty of time for us to reflect on what we've been doing and make perhaps a shared piece of work, as well as obviously throughout the session producing any individual things that we want to do. So really excited and won't delay us any further.
Thank you, Susan. So I think it'd be great to have an opportunity to introduce yourselves to each other. And I think part of today was, if you could, was bring in a green thing with you. So I will now split you into little breakout rooms.
Thank you. So hold on a second. I think we've got a bit of an echo. Can someone switch their speakers off? Right, let's try again. That's better. So shall we go through our PowerPoint? So I've put together about 10 minutes worth of images from across art history, just to sort of get us started, and I suppose to look at how other people have been inspired by nature across the centuries. So The Green and the Microscopic is the title of today's workshop, which we're taking fairly loosely. So I'll just take you through these for 10 minutes, and then we'll get to move on into the practical bit. Okay, would you move the slides on, Sam, for me? So the first one here, Albrecht Dürer. So it's actually called The Great Piece of Turf. I think I got my title a bit wrong. So Albrecht Dürer's famous painter from the German Renaissance, and he made this in 1503. So there's several things that actually are just amazing about this. for one, the very fact that he painted a piece of turf in 1503, in those days, people didn't really paint things like that. They painted, you know, history paintings, religious paintings, whatever. But to paint what is essentially weeds in absolutely meticulous detail was an extraordinary thing to do. And look at how he's done it. I just think this is extraordinary. So I thought he was a good place to begin. So it looks like he's literally dug up a clump of earth and brought it into the studio, I think. But when you look more closely, that's not it at all. It's actually quite carefully composed, this painting. So if you look, there's a sort of invisible composition line from the bottom right of the painting, takes you up to the top left. And then you'll find it kind of, you very cleverly lead your eye around. So you sort of, your eye follows down through the seed heads, and then you come back to the brown, squishy stuff at the bottom, and it leads you almost in a figure of 8 back through the picture, keeps your eye moving. So what seems very simple is actually very clever. Also, I wondered if we might just spend a moment going, wow, at the sheer amount of greens he's managed to get into such a small painting. So I think that the picture's about life size for the grasses, so maybe 40 centimetres high. So could we move on, Sam, to the next one? So here we go. This is Claude Monet, one of his water lily paintings. So this is huge. This is a bit more than 2 meters wide. And in a way, he's also painting something just as he sees it. But this is a load of smudges and dashes and little lines and dashes. And actually, if you removed a few of those flowers, this is completely abstract painting. So he painted loads of these water lily pictures from his garden in Giverny. Generally, they're huge. They're much beyond the periphery of your vision. So the effect when you look at them, it feels like you're literally in a floating world. You know, you're in this amazing land of water. And so in one way, he's just painted the surface of his pond. But in another way, he's kind of created this whole world for you to step into. I think it's just epic. Okay, can we move on to the next one, Sam? Ah, right, so this is Patrick Blanc's living room. How cool is that? So Patrick Blanc is a botanist. He's a French botanist, and he's credited with coming up with the first kind of vertical gardens. So he came up with a hydroponic system so that the plants can be grown inside or out. So he makes these extraordinary vertical artworks really out of leaves and textures and shapes, and I just think it's extraordinary that he's composing with like leaves that are literally growing. I just think it's so exciting. So I saw a brilliant conversation with him recently in the press, and it had this wonderful photo of him. He just made a souffle in the lockdown, and he has green hair, Patrick Blanc, so he's pictured in front of this living wall with his souffle. Oh, what's not to like about a man with green hair and souffle? Anyway, can we move on? So, okay, this next one, this is a very abstract piece. This is by Bryce Marden, who is an American painter. So he's based in New York. And this piece is called Eastern Moss. So it's 13 feet wide, and it's made up of 9 panels. And the only colour he's used in the painting is terre verte. So terre verte translates as green earth. So the pigment is literally dug from the earth. So it's really ancient. The ancient Romans used to use it, and it was really popular in the Renaissance as a colour that they would put underneath portraits. So it would be the base colour underneath like all the flesh tones. So the colour is transparent, it's semi-transparent, a slightly greenish hue, and the way he's painted this is in very thin veils of paint. So the effect of the real painting is that it's very intense and it sort of glistens and shimmers. And I think my feeling is it's a bit like if you zoomed right in to a piece of moss and literally stepped into this kind of slice of like another world almost. So, okay, could we move on to another one, Sam? Thank you. Ooh. Okay, so we've got 2 of these. This is Gustav Klimt, the apple tree. So Gustav Klimt is an Austrian painter. He's more famous really for portraits. So the most famous thing that you probably have seen at some point will be The Kiss, which has got a lot of gold And he was very famous for these sort of decorative portraiture. But he also made a lot of landscape paintings through his life, usually on his summer holidays, I think. And mostly they were square, which is actually quite unusual in those days to make a square landscape painting. So I just think these are fascinating. So to me, that looks almost pixelated. Feels like this man could have loved the digital age, really. He used to make these outside, so he was painting on the spot. But I don't think he was really painting necessarily what he saw so much as filling every centimetre with information, really vibrant mix. So in one way, I think he's zooming right in on the details, and then in another, he's zooming right out and giving you the sort of overall effect. So he used to use opera glasses to paint with, and I think that sort of makes sense. You can imagine him kind of standing there, zooming in on detail that's really a bit too far for your eyes to see. Could you move us to the next one, Sam? By the same man. So this one, Rose Bushes Under the Trees, is another great example of these kind of flickering landscape paintings, almost like mosaics, I think. So this one, I just think is epic. If you look at the top right-hand corner there, if you were to cover up that tiny little triangle where you can see the sky and a little bit of a distant hill, that's really the only bit of this painting that gives you a sense of distance. So if you remove that and you took out the tree trunks, that is a completely abstract painting. And I just think it's quite extraordinary, his way of seeing. So he was very influenced by Japanese art, which tends to do this kind of flattening and abstracting of shapes, and then balancing that with a really intense decorative element. So yeah, quite a fascinating guy. Okay, could we move on, Sam? So this is Henri Rousseau, another French painter. So Tiger in a Tropical Storm, surprised. So the thing that strikes me most about this picture is the composition, which I just think is extraordinary. So that lovely curve of the tiger whizzing down and leaping, and you feel like you're really in there. So everything is simplified and exaggerated and enlarged. And I think you get the sense that you're really in there. So all the branches, the rain, everything is whizzing across the same direction. So could we move on to the next one? We've got some details of this. Right, here we are. So this is the same painting and we're looking more closely. If you take a look there, you can see the sheer variety of greens and how carefully he's painted every single leaf. And then you can also see, particularly on the one on the right, how he's used a sort of glaze to do the rain, all of which exaggerates that kind of speed and direction. So can we move on? There's another one moving onwards. Okay, so this is also by Henri Rousseau, so Exotic Landscape. So you can see again, he gets really into these great big jungle plants, exaggerates them really, and simplifies them. So it's all about the texture and the way they form quite an abstract pattern. So you could be forgiven for thinking he spent half his life in a jungle, but he actually never left France. So what he used to do was go to the glass houses in Paris, and he'd take his drawing pad and he'd get up close and draw all of these leaves. So sometimes he actually mixes up the glass houses a bit, so you will get some plants that wouldn't really grow in the same forest, if you know what I mean. But he just lets his imagination go wild. I just think that's amazing. And give us one more if you would, Sam. There's another one. So I wrote down here, this is what Henri Rousseau said about these jungle paintings. He said, when I go into the glass houses, I see the strange plants of exotic lands. It seems to me that I enter a dream. And I think they feel like that. They feel like a dream world. But at the same time, they're actually really well observed. So he's kind of done that lovely thing of amalgamating real observed information with imagination. And he plays with scale a great deal. So I think we might have a go at that as well when we get to it. Right, can we move on to our next one, Sam? The Eden Project. So here we are in one of the biomes in the Eden Project in Cornwall. And to be honest, I can pretty much imagine Henri Rousseau sat there with his drawing pad. And you know, it wouldn't take much, would it? If you drifted a tiger in, you could turn this into a proper jungle painting. Bit of imagination, and you could be there. Okay, what's our next one, Sam? I actually can't quite remember now. David Hockney iPad drawings. So these, in the lockdown, David Hockney's been making lots of drawings from his iPad in Normandy. I'll read you what he says about these. So these are his words. He says, I began drawing the winter trees on a new iPad. Then this virus started. I went on drawing the trees that eventually burst into blossom. Meanwhile, the virus is going mad, and many people said my drawings were a great respite from what was going on. So that daffodils one, I think, is called Do Remember They Can't Cancel the Spring. So he's making these drawings which I think do kind of sum up the unfolding of spring. They have that freshness. And if you look, you can see the variety of marks and dots and dashes and squiggles that he can get into a drawing is remarkable. And it does speak of that kind of really fresh, promising thing that you have new life in spring. So he carries on, he says, I intend to carry on with my work, which I now see is very important. We've lost touch with nature rather foolishly, as we are part of it, not outside it. This will in time be over, and then what? So I saw a lovely conversation with Hockney recently, which we'll put a link to at the end for everyone to look at. It's only maybe 5 minutes long. But one of the way he starts the conversation is this. He says, the world is very, very beautiful if you look at it, but most people don't look very much. And I think that's really what we're trying to focus on, this idea that actually by looking intensely at something, you do in fact start to see more. And that is really what this is all about, whether the end result is poetry or painting or music or anything, it doesn't really matter. The very fact you've done it is where it's at. Okay, can we have our last few? I think the next couple, here we go. So we're to Dove Cottage now. So the image on the left is a mossy wall at the entrance to Dove Cottage Garden, which was the home of William and Dorothy Wordsworth in Grasmere. And they have so many walls like this that are literally alive with moss and flowers. And the Wordsworths were very inspired by nature, and I think probably very knowledgeable actually about their plants. So that the picture on the right here is a page from their book of botany that they owned. They also owned a microscope. So, you know, they were pretty serious about really getting to grips with all of the plants they were looking at. And I think, well, actually, can we have the next couple of slides as well, Sam? Here we go. So sorry about the image quality for the one on the left, but you can maybe just make it out that that's the back door of Dove Cottage into the garden. So you can see how it's kind of hunkered down into the garden. If you've never been, the garden there is on a slope. It's a fairly steep sort of fell-side garden. And their approach to gardening was very sort of to keep it semi-wild, really. And I think the gardener there at the moment, Jane Roberts, and the previous gardener, Sally Hall, have been very good at trying to keep a balance of plants that would be something like what they would have had, certainly what they would have approved of anyway. So Jane is a botanist as well, and she was saying recently that she thinks there are 227 different types of plants in the garden at the moment. She estimates perhaps 16 different grasses and maybe about 50 types of moss, but she said she'd need an expert to be sure about that, and a microscope really, because to really be clear about identifying moss, she said you'd need quite a powerful microscope. So the one on the right there is another mossy wall, also by Dove Cottage Garden, which I just think is glorious. Look at those textures. It's just lovely, isn't it? So I'm going to leave you with a couple of moss facts because I can't resist. So moss is it's been around for 450 million years, which kind of blows my mind. So this little plant was around when the dinosaurs were here. I just think that's extraordinary. Also, it doesn't have any roots, which is really, you know, quite a thing, and no veins or anything like that. So it doesn't like draw water up. That means it can move around a bit more easily than other plants. So it can regenerate from a little fragment quite readily. So, you know, I just think moss is extraordinary. If I had a microscope, I would definitely be making a series of paintings of moss. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there for now, and we'll move on to our next bit and hear a bit from Susan.
Hello, everybody. That was just fascinating, Alison. Beautiful images. What Alison didn't include, though, was the fact that she's been painting in Dove Cottage Garden at all hours of day and night throughout different seasons. And I'm sure we'll be able to share some of those images of Alison's paintings after the session because they are fantastic. We thought it might just be interesting, having finished on the images with views of Dove Cottage and reflections on moss, to hear a little bit from Dorothy Wordsworth herself, because as I mentioned at the beginning, she was a wonderful recorder of her natural observations. She had a very keen eye, and her brother did say that he gave her eyes and he gave her ears because of her observation skills. So I thought it'd be nice to read a little bit from the journal for today. That's the 16th of June, but in 1802. She says, "We walked towards Rydal for letters, met Frank Beatty with the expected one from Mary. We went up into Rydal Woods and read it there. We sat near an old wall which fenced a hazel grove, which William said was exactly like the Filbert Grove at Middleham. It's a beautiful spot, a sloping or rather steep piece of ground with hazels growing tall and erect in clumps at distances, almost seeming regular as if they'd been planted." And I'll read a little bit more, but I just thought it might be interesting having these images in our heads, thinking about green, bearing in mind that focusing, that microscopic looking in at detail, to just also be listening out for details in Dorothy's descriptions that we might weave into a bit of writing and our painting and drawing. We returned to dinner. I wrote to Mary after dinner while William sat in the orchard. And I think it's lovely that she's talking about the orchards, having just seen those amazing Klimt apple trees. When Mr. Simpson was gone, I read my letter to William, speaking to Mary about having a cat. I spoke of the little birds keeping us company, and William told me that that very morning, the bird had perched upon his leg. He'd been lying very still and had watched this little creature. It had come under the bench where he was sitting and then flew up to his leg. He thoughtlessly stirred himself to look further at it, and it flew onto the apple tree just above him. It was a little young creature that had just left its nest, equally unacquainted with man and unaccustomed to struggle against storms and winds. While it was upon the apple tree, the wind blew about the stiff boughs, and the bird seemed bemazed and not strong enough to strive with it. The swallows come to the sitting room window as if wishing to build, but I'm afraid they will not have courage for it. But I believe they will build at my room window. They twitter and make a bustle and little cheerful song, hanging against the panes of glass with their soft white bellies close to the glass and their forked fish-like tails. They swim round and again they come. It was a sweet evening. We first walked to the top of the hill to look at Rydal and then to Butterlip Howe. I do not now see the brownness that was in the coppices. The lower hawthorn blossoms passing away, those on the hills are a faint white. The wild Gelder rose is coming out, and the wild roses. I've seen no honeysuckles yet except our own one, nestling, and a tree of the yellow kind at Mrs. Townley's the day I went with Ellen to Windermere. Foxgloves are now frequent. The first I saw was that day with Ellen, and the ripe first strawberries. A letter from Coleridge. I read the first canto of The Fairy Queen to William. William went to bed immediately. I love that. I don't know whether it was the effect of reading The Fairy Queen that sent William straight off to bed. But I think in that description, she includes so many everyday details like dinner, but the observations of the birds, and then the way in which she, in her imagination, shifts the vision of the swallows into fish. And that might be the sort of transitions that we make in some of our own work today and going forward, really. There's one particular thing that I thought we might just bear in mind, which is the writing of haiku. And with a bit of luck, we'll be able to put something into the chat room, and certainly in any follow-up sort of information after the session, about how haiku are little tiny, very intense, imagist poems, which focus on nature and often have a turning point. And although they're originally Japanese, they've proved very popular since, and people adapt and adopt them in different ways. And I've been looking at Dorothy Wordsworth's journal entries, just like the one that we've just read, and finding that quite a lot of what she writes falls naturally into haiku. So that might be something that we try alongside our collaborative pieces. So, and I can see that Sam is helpfully putting things in the chat room. That's great. Thank you. So think we're going to look at different notions of green now, aren't we, Alison? So.
I think we should. I think it's quite fascinating how, for different people, green brings up different things. You know, I think when I was thinking about, you know, what would I come up with if someone said, what does green make you think of? I was thinking, you know, spring and new life. But then I was thinking also, it's kind of, if you're feeling sick, you would say you're feeling green, wouldn't you? And I was thinking about the green with jealousy and all of that. I also read some interesting comment from a Derek Jarman book that I was reading, and he talks about it. Well, I'll read it actually. He says, these are some of the poisons in your hedgerow: green aconite, cooking pint, and woody nightshade. Green's killing reputation, unlucky green, comes from another poison, arsenic, which produced emerald paint. And I think it's quite interesting that some paint is in fact toxic. There are some pigments which actually are poison, and that's quite interesting. I'm not sure if that makes them kind of edgy to use. Maybe it does. Emerald green is this colour I've always struggled with because it's violent. You know, it's really violent to use. Anyway, that aside, shall we do some drawing? And I just thought, as we're drawing, if any thoughts or words or descriptions come to you as we're drawing, please scribble them down either on the same bit of paper or separately. So with, you know, neither of us mind at all whether you do more words or more drawing or mix them up. That's all of that is fine. Am I right, Susan, that we're going on to a bit of drawing? Is that okay? Right. Okay, so hopefully you can see my phone okay. Hold on.
Yeah, if you can go on speaker view, it'll be easier. And Alison, if you use the sound from your phone, that will make sure the image from your phone is the large view that people can see.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me. Does that work?
Yep.
Hopefully you can hear me and you can see my bit of paper. That would be even better. Is that okay? Shall I lift this up?
That's better.
How's that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Right. So I thought what we might do, I'm going to work quite small only because of the logistics of the fact that I'm balancing quite a lot of equipment and I don't want to send it all flying. So I'm just using, this is computer paper, it's just paper for doodling really. So if you have got any kind of paper that's fairly thin that you're not too bothered about, get a piece of that. A4 is fine, or bigger is fine. We're just going to do a few exercises to start us off, just to kind of, you know how a dancer limbers up. We're going to do the equivalent thing for drawing. So I've just folded a piece in half for now, but you can work at A4 if you want to. As I say, I'm doing that because of the restrictions of my working. Now here you can see, perhaps you can see I've got a little jar full of grasses and I suppose weeds essentially, but they are very beautiful. I think I might start with this one. So whatever your green thing is that you've brought with you, just have a good look at it to start with. How about just turning it around and just really look at it for a minute? Okay, now take a pen. Could be a pen, could be a biro, could be a pencil. It doesn't honestly matter. I'm going to use a pen for this to start with, and we're just going to do some very simple, what you might call a blind drawing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the line without looking at my paper. So you're allowed to look at your paper to put your pen on the paper, so you're not literally drawing on the table. That is allowed. Otherwise, you're not allowed to take your pen off the paper, and you're not allowed to look at your paper. So all I'm going to do is with my eyes, I'm going to follow that, and I'm going to just draw down, and you will find you'll get a slightly wacky drawing. So fairly quickly, and I'm just going to try and get around the edges roughly of my grassy thing, and I'm not going to look at it, and it might go off the paper, and it's fine if it does. And I'm just kind of taking the trouble to look around every little, I don't even know the name for those, but they're the bits that hold the seeds. Oh dear, I could do with botanical knowledge that I don't have. Right. So just see if you can find your way. You can do this with me. You'll end up with a slightly bonkers drawing, and that's good. That's what it's meant to be. Okay. Right. Now you're allowed to look at your paper. So I'm now I've got a pencil as well. If you haven't got any other thing, it's fine. If you have got something else like a pencil or a felt tip, I would go for that next. Now turn it around so you've got a slightly different view of it. And I'm going to go again on the top, same thing again, just look at the grass or the leaf, whatever you've got, not at the paper, and just try and follow the edges. So as though you're tracing it, really. Don't be worried at all about what it looks like. This is all about the looking. It's the whole point. And sometimes, no matter how weird the drawing is, you'll find that you have learnt something, like I already know this piece of grass better than I did before we began. And brilliantly, you are going to end up with a weird doodly drawing. And really that's the whole point, is that you're not too worried about what this looks like. So I'm going to try and get some of these little guys in the end there. And don't forget, you have to keep your pencil on the paper, that's part of it. Okay, so that's slightly bonkers, but anyway, that's a good start. So the next thing I thought we might do is another piece of paper, or turn it over, or whatever you want to do. I might have another piece. As I say, I'm just using half, but that's only because of my arrangement here. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. Right, so with this one, I think what I might have is this. Oh, he's nice. There we are. I'm going to use him now. So for you people who are good at your plants, you'll know all these. So you will recognise that they are generally weeds. It says something about my gardening, but anyway, Dorothy Wordsworth wouldn't be impressed. So with these, I'm going to use a pencil this time, but you could use a biro or whatever you have. It's absolutely fine. So I'm going to go a little bit more slowly, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and imagine that I'm using my finger to actually go around, trace the edge of everything, okay, and just use your pencil in the same way that your finger is tracing them. So just try and, as though you're going right around the edge. So my leaf here has actually got little teeth on it, which is quite nice. So I'm going to have my little teeth and go up the stem on the next leaf. So I'm not being too worried about the end result. I am being careful though. I'm trying to get the right shapes, but this isn't about getting a finished piece of artwork. It's about the looking, and actually it's about slowing down. And already I'm starting to notice new things, like there are veins under there which are nice, so we'll have those in. Mine goes off the paper, which I quite like. And then this. So I'm just literally, I'm tracing off what I can see. Oh my goodness, there's a whole host of green fly. Oh wow, okay, we're going to have them because they're brilliant. Also, I feel Mr. Russo would love these green flies, so these are going in. I don't know if you can see them, but they've really made my day. Okay, so you can see what I'm doing anyway, the general gist at least. So I think I might go just a little quicker. Let's finish off there. Okay, and it's fine if you want to add some bits in. So, you know, I quite fancy an extra leaf that's not really there, so I'm just going to put it in because I can. And I'm going to have it going off the page as well. Now, I love these green fly that have just turned up. So I feel as though they could, if I was turning this into a picture, I might actually try and take the point of view of the green fly and imagine if you were one of these little guys, what would you be looking at? You know, how big would that leaf be? Imagine it. So you could have you could have great fun with the scale. Anyway, that wasn't the main point. The main point was now to look at these and look at them just as shapes now. So I'm going to put that down and I'm going to focus on the actual drawing and think about just different marks you might make. So I'm going to have a few lines in this bit, making some patterns. So I'm going to have some dots on here, some zigzags. And the whole point of this is that you're now starting to look at these shapes we've just done. I'm having squiggles on this because that seems nice. You're starting now to look at these shapes as abstract shapes. It's not a drawing of a plant anymore. It's actually a piece of art appearing. So let's make as many squiggles, spirals, spots, dots, blots, whatever you can think of. And you might also start to think about the shapes around. And it's fine if you want to add bits in and use your imagination, please do. So there's no rules about this. The whole point is just to fill your paper up with patterns whatever comes to mind, it doesn't really matter. And also you might like to try shading. So you could go dark through to light and try and grade that quite gradually. So all you're doing is you're pushing down a lot to start with and then lifting the pressure as you go. And just practice that a bit. It's quite nice just to get your hand moving so that you kind of become confident. It's a bit like trying out the tools, isn't it, in a toolbox? So I think it's fine to just have a go at different marks and see what you can come up with. Okay, right, that's enough for now. Let's move on to some paint, shall we? So I don't know if everybody's got paint, and it's fine if you haven't. If you have got any kind of colour, that would be great. So if you've got, I don't know, felt tips, or I've got some watercolours here and some acrylics, which I'm going to use, but you use whatever you've got. Really, it's not about the thing you're using, it's about the process of creating and actually how it makes you think and maybe open up your head. So shall we do some paint techniques? Is that what we were meant to be doing, Susan? I'm just checking. Okay, so.
I think that's right, Alison. I think we were going to be thinking about greens as well, weren't we?
Yes, you're right. Okay. Have I just created an echo? Are we okay? We're okay. Okay. So I think what we might start with is I'm going to show you a few techniques, ways of applying the paint, and then leave you for a while, 20 minutes or so, to make your own paintings. So while we do these little demonstrations, let's get going. If you want to write down words and ideas that occur to you, please do. So I've actually got, you probably can't see it, but I'm going to show you, here we are. I've got a little selection of twigs. I'm a big fan of working with twigs. So I'm actually going to start with, now then, what shall I have? Okay, right, I'm going to use, I think I might go for the same thing again. This leaf, I don't know if you can see it, but it rather brilliantly, something has eaten enormous great chunks out of it, which I kind of really like. So I might start there. So whatever your plant is, turn it around in your fingers and have a really good look at it. Actually, see how, just notice, spend some time noticing it. So for me, the light's falling on this part of the stem. So this is almost white with a very yellowy bit. And then there are darker bits underneath. There are my wonderful collection of green fly, which I'm trying quite hard not to squish. And this stem under here is a much more kind of yellowy, greeny, marshy type of green. And I think this is where we get to the idea that it's all very well saying, what does green make you think of? But there are so many types of green. So I would suggest trying to mix about, well, 5 or 6 different greens if you can. So whatever paint you're using, if you've got a yellow and a blue, those two together will make you green. The more yellows and blues you've got, the more varieties of green you're going to get. And it would be great, when I've just shown you these techniques, if you would mix lots of different versions, that would be fabulous. And just, even if you cover the whole paper, that would be really good as well. So, right, here's a few techniques. Let's start with, so scoring the paper is a nice thing to do to start with. I'm going to use a slightly thicker bit of paper. So this is, it's just cartridge paper from a fairly sort of average sketchbook. So I'm going to look at one of these brilliantly eaten leaves, actually. So I'm going to score. Right, here we go. Let's do that. Now, you could use the wrong end of a biro. You could use, in fact, let's use the wrong end of a biro. So what I'm doing is scoring some lines into the paper. You probably won't see them at the moment, but wherever I'm scoring the lines, I'm going to wash it over with paint in a minute. And so where these scored lines are going to come out darker. So this is a way of sort of beginning a painting, I suppose. Almost creating like a sort of underneath layer that's going to add some interest to all the textures and marks. So I think that's what I would like you to think about, is the variety of marks, textures, as well as the variety of greens you can mix. So I'm just going to score this in, and then I'll wash it over and you'll be able to see it. Let's do that. There we are. So I'm going to use watercolours to wash this over, but you could use what you like, really. The thing about watercolour that's worth remembering is that it dries a little bit paler than you think it's going to. So it's worth making it a bit darker than you think you want it. So I don't know if you can see that. I'll hold it up. You can, hopefully you can see that there's a kind of leaf scored under the paint there. So that might be a nice way to begin, but you don't have to. I'm just literally, these are not things you have to do. These are suggestions for things you might do if you want to. So the next thing I'm going to try, or the next thing I'm going to show you, is this. So if you want very fine lines, so I'm going to go back to my grass, which is very delicate here, and I'm going to use one of my favourite twigs. So I'm going to dip it in water, and I'm going to draw lines with the water. So again, you probably won't see them to start with, but this is a way of getting really delicate. You have to be a bit patient with this. Delicate little lines. You can get really up close to the details when you get into the brilliant thing about twigs is they come in all different shapes and sizes, and they're free. What's not to like? So I actually quite often use more twigs than paintbrushes. So I'm just literally drawing with the water, and it's fine if it blobs up a bit. Obviously you can remove it with a cloth if you want to. I'll just do a few just to give you the general idea. The thing about this is you need to drop your paint in before it dries. So here we go. So then with a paintbrush, what I've done now is a bit of paint on my brush, and I'm just going to very gently, enough to just let it touch the water without making a mark on the, you know, so I'm not using the brush to make the mark. What's happening is the colour is following the lines I've put down. Perhaps you can see, hopefully. Now the lovely thing about this technique, if you have the patience, is you can make beautiful things happen where colours will merge together that you probably couldn't do if you were trying to, well, you could do it with a paintbrush if you had a tiny paintbrush, but if you don't, this is a way of getting really delicate lines without the tiniest of paintbrushes. So hopefully you can see something like what's happening there. Obviously you could build up a really delicate drawing. I'll hold that up so you can see. Hopefully you can see. Hopefully, yeah. Okay. And then another thing I thought we might try is to make, I was thinking about the microscopic idea. Going back to the twigs, I've got a great big chunky twig here. And I'm just going to make a big dollop of water. Dollop isn't probably really not the right word. Droplets, that was a better word. So I'm using a twig simply because I think you're going to get better droplets. You can make several if you want. I would do this probably on a separate piece of paper than the one you're working on, because these are going to take all day to dry probably. But keep putting water on until you're happy with your droplet arrangement. And you could use a brush actually. There you go. That's actually perhaps quite good. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is just drop some colour into there. So again, you want to use colour that's probably a bit brighter than you think you want. And I'm just thinking here about the microscopic idea that we were talking about. It seems to me that if you did have a magnifying glass or a microscope, these little droplets seem to me to speak of that kind of magnification. I kind of like the way the paint will find its own natural shape. So there's an element of losing control here, which I think is really lovely. It means that you're letting nature kind of take the lead. So I'm going to try just a few colours in there. Let them merge a bit. Don't know if you can see that very well, perhaps you can. So I'm going to let those dry, which, like I say, it's going to take probably ages. So I would put them on one side, and then I think I'm going to show you just a couple of things with acrylic paint, and then I'm going to let you get on. So with acrylic paint, obviously it's a bit different. You don't have the transparency that you have with watercolour, but it's possible to get some really nice kind of chunky stuff going on. So I'm going to just mix a couple of colours and see what we can do. So I think next to this, you see how we had our lovely delicate lines. I think it's nice to build up something really quite chunky, and you know, it's quite lovely to just squelch it on a bit really and let it merge and actually let the paint do the talking as well. I think this is where it gets really fun. And also go back to the twigs if you want. You might want to have a cloth to, there might be fingers, but fine to go back to the twigs. And while you've got this paint, which is thick and chunky, you can draw through as well. So again, you can make not the best twig. Isn't that weird? You have good twigs and not good twigs. But you can draw through as well. And you can make lovely, you know, there's really no rules about this. Come up with as many ways of applying this paint as you want to. And you might find that amalgamating techniques is quite fun too. So, you know, you can pick out the darker bits. And then every so often, having got together some of these techniques, I would suggest exploring, seeing what you can do, mix all your different colours, cover your paper, and then go back to your original plant and have a really good look again. And then perhaps on a fresh piece of paper, think about perhaps how you might like to compose it. So you might want to just focus in on a tiny bit. You might want, like I said before, to pretend you're tiny on this stem and you're looking up. Or you might want to look underneath and paint it upside down. You might want to do the bird's eye view. You might want to make it up. It's completely up to you. But I think it would be lovely if you could then, in fact, let's do this now. Off the top of your head, without thinking too much, write down 3 words that these particular shades of green make you think of. You could score them into the paper, or you could just write them down. So, I've gone for swamps, green fly, and slime. I'm not sure what that says about me, but anyway, keep doing that. Whenever you have thoughts about good words, scribble them down. I kind of think as well, when you go around, you could go back and describe all these shapes visually by drawing them, or with words, or both. So, for example, my leaf here has got lovely, delicate little teeth, but then it's got a kind of smudgy curve underneath that is smudgy. So Dorothy Wordsworth, I think, uses a million versions of ways to describe green. Things like soft green is something I think of. And I think this kind of green is soft green. So if I was to put that into paint, which, if I'm honest, I do a bit more easily than I do with words, I would probably get sloshy with it. So what I mean by that is this. Hold on. Last thing, and then I'm going to let you get on with it. So with watercolours, again, I am now. Lots of water on your paper. Another lovely, lovely thing to do is to kind of let the paint find, you know, let the paint do it for you. So it's lovely just to drop colour in and let it do merging. And actually, although it takes a long time to dry, you sometimes find you can get lovely, lovely effects this way. And they're things you couldn't really have planned, if you know what I mean. So the water is very much your friend where watercolour is concerned. So if things go a bit wrong and you've got colour in the place where you didn't want it or something like that, all you have to do is this: add more water. So suppose I want to take this bit out, add extra water. Don't be worried at all. And then with a cloth, really dry out the brush, like squeeze it so that you've got a dry brush, and then you can kind of mop it up. And it might leave you with a stain, but fundamentally, sorry, I perhaps can't see this very well. You can take out the bits you didn't want. So it acts a bit like a rubber. You can also draw a line through. So perhaps if we put a line through here, so I'm adding water, look, and then I'm drying out the brush completely, and then taking that off. If you want, take out more, add more water. Clearly, you can, use the cloth as well if you want to. So, there are no rules about this. You can completely make it up. You can also make nice little dabby marks with the cloth when you've done that. There's really no end to, you can lose, trust me, you can lose whole days, if not weeks doing this. So I'll hold up my strange little squishy. For me, this might class as soft green, I think, some of this. Anyway, I'm going to let you get going now on your own work. And if you want to score in words to begin with, that might be a nice thing. You know how we were scoring in the leaves? You could do that with text as well, if you're minded to. I'm going to leave you there for a minute.
So Alison, should we say 10 minutes? It's 7:40 now.
Hi Sam, can you hear me? You?
I can.
Right, that's better. Okay.
Should we leave people for 10 minutes? Because it's 11:40, and then catch back up in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, let's do that. Would be lovely. Yeah. Original sin like the green too. Oh my goodness, what a thought. Yeah, crikey. I'm going to refer that to my green fly and see what they come back with.
I'm just going to be scribing up some of the words that people have been sending through. So anything else people want to add into the mix will go up on this lovely green wall that Alison prepared earlier.
I'm gonna read you a couple of bits from here, Susan. You're gonna like this. This is Werner's Nomenclature of Colours, given to me by the lovely Helen Thomas, who I think is there painting somewhere. So this book was made before the days of photography, and it was a sort of way by which artists, scientists, well, here it says in the front, look, zoology, botany, chemistry, mineralogy, anatomy, and the arts. So it was a book for all of these disciplines, and it describes colours. So Charles Darwin used it as well. So I'm going to read you sap green. You might like this one. Sap green is classed as the underside or lower wings of the orange-tipped butterfly.
Alison, can you hear me? Just a thumbs up if you can. No, I don't think Alison can hear me. Can you hear me, Alison?
Hello.
Ah, great. So there were a couple of questions in the chat I thought you might be able to answer while people are busy. So Penny has asked, have you printed with the leaves?
I do sometimes print with things, and yes, you can make lovely leaf prints, you really can. So there's different ways of doing that. And I suppose it depends a bit on your leaf. If it was a really nice one with sort of sticking out veins, you could use quite thick paint and literally just push down. But if it's a more delicate one, I think there are lots of ways in which you might do that. If you had a roller, you could make some lovely prints with it. By literally, you know, rollering ink on. Yeah, I mean, there's any number of things you could do. You could cover it in water and then put paint on your, you know, on your table or whatever, and do it that way. You could really play about with it, in fact, actually.
And we've had another question from Sue, just talking about what kind of paper you're using for watercolour, as she's not sure that printer paper would work.
Yeah, so printer paper, it'll be kind of okay, but it'll go wobbly, which I don't think really matters necessarily. But what I've used here is cartridge paper. So you do get different grades of paper. There's a world of paper out there, to be honest. So this is just fairly standard cartridge paper for drawing on, and that actually will take watercolour quite well. So this is from a fairly average sketchbook. I think it's 250 grams. So they describe paper by its weight. So good watercolour paper would be really thick, probably 300 grams or even more. And then you get different textures. Like I say, there's a world of paper. Watercolour paper, you get sort of, you know, hot pressed and cold pressed and all sorts of things. But just cartridge paper is fine for what we're doing here, I think. Thicker the better. But if you get into it, try experimenting with different papers. It makes a huge difference to how the paint will sit. So some watercolour paper is very, very textured, and some is perfectly smooth for botanical illustration. So I meant to say, if anyone is keen on botanical illustration, it would be lovely, lovely if you want to do any very delicate, you know, slow paintings. That would be lovely. I think really for everybody, they'll need to finish off what we've started here afterwards. And if they'd like to send that through or take a phone photo, and email it through to Susan or I, that would be lovely. We could maybe feedback about that or suggest things, or we would love to print it off and include it in our large green scroll poem that's happening at the other end of the room, I think. It's a bit weird because she's getting up to things behind me. I don't know what's going on. I can just hear industrious scribbling of a pen.
Excellent. So we'll definitely include both of your email addresses in the follow-up so that people then can email their work directly to you, if you're happy with that.
That would be great. And then we'll do our best to feed back in a useful fashion. And then as well, we can offer some kind of, you know, advice or whatever's required, or just go, wow, that's brilliant, can we include it in our thing? I know we've got a mixture of people who've never really done this before and people who do this, you know, do painting and writing anyway. So I think that's really wonderful, actually, that everyone can do this in their own way.
And just finally, I'm just looking further up the chat. We've had a question from Polly earlier on, just looking back at the images that you shared in your presentation and asking about the Eastern moss picture. If you could just describe the colour, because on her screen it was coming up grey.
Oh, yeah, sure. So the colour, Polly, is called terre vert. So terre vert is one of these brilliant colours that's quite subtle. I'm not surprised it came up grey. It's a semi-transparent pigment. And it's one of those that if you go to a proper old style art shop like Cornelison's or something, they sell pigments in jars. It's like stepping back into 1750. It's brilliant. They would class that as being from antiquity, you know, rather than saying it was from such a year, because it's so old. So the ancient Romans used it. It's literally dug from the earth. But different companies make it slightly differently. And so Bryce Marden made a whole series of paintings just with terre vert. I think he used about 10 or 11 different makes of terre vert. And by applying it in these really thin veils, he actually made a whole series of work that looks like it's all different colours, but it's actually all from terre vert. So yeah, hopefully that might help. It's kind of a mossy green, actually. I think of that as being, he called it Eastern moss, that painting. And I think it is quite a mossy green. He doesn't really say that he's a landscape painter exactly, but he's definitely influenced by the landscape. So he, for example, he planted a moss garden at his studio. So, you know, and he's very into the sort of Eastern philosophy and very heavily influenced by Chinese art, particularly, and Asian calligraphy. And in fact, somewhere I've got a nice quote which I forgot to read, so I might read you that. He said about that painting, let me see if I can find it. Here we go. I meant to read you this and I forgot. He said, in a certain sense, these are pure landscape pictures. It is the earth, because it kind of is. He has literally painted it with the earth. And then his daughter said this. She says, he's always been obsessed with moss. I think these are Zen poetic paintings about nature. And I have to say, I would agree with that. I'm really looking forward to seeing them in the flesh one day. Bit of a long answer, sorry.
That's great. That's all that's all the questions that I can see for now. I'm just going to pop a link into the survey that at the end of this session, we'd be ever so grateful if people wouldn't mind taking 2 minutes to fill out a very simple survey just to help us evaluate today's session. As you know, we've got 3 of these running. You can join 1 or all 3, and the next one is in a fortnight. So if you wouldn't mind taking a minute to complete that survey at the end of today's session, that would be really helpful. But I think we're ready to take us through the reflection now, both. Is that good with you?
That's fine. Time seems to be doing a bit of a weird whizzing thing. There was a couple of things I wanted to add to Susan's large green writing on the back there, but I didn't know how to do the chat. So I have a list. Oh, okay, I have a list of pigments. So Viridian, chromium oxide, cobalt green, phthalo green, spelt with a P, phthalo turquoise, terre vert, obviously, verdigris, malachite, emerald, and one I can't pronounce, so I'm not going to try. What have you got on there at the moment, Susan? Do you want my version of a haiku? Yeah.
Hello. I don't know if everyone can see this sheet behind me with the green. I could read through the things that I've captured. I'm sure I've missed things. Ideas kept coming in. I've just seen another one, which is jade. So in no particular order, we've got a green thought in a green shade, sap, wild, wet, letting go, bad luck and fairies, alchemy, terre vert, happy, life, Kendall green, Eastern moss, Pure landscape, it's the earth. Algae, viridian, green as glass, lush, green light, green night, obsessed with moss. That might be up there with my favourites. Green, green, the rushes o, cushion, original sin, northern lights, green as leaves reflected through glass, scented sunlight in a hay meadow, free, loads more names for green in the past, wonder, moss garden, orchard, Eden, cheer for Eden, water is very much your friend, green man, jade, turquoise, limes, verdigris. I've probably missed some.
How about green with envy?
Yes.
And green at the gills.
I'll find bilious green to put that next to.
Oh, bilious, I like that.
Going to do some reflecting. So we're going to have to share from people what they've been producing.
If anyone would like to, I'd love to see if anyone's managed to. I know you haven't had very long. It'd be lovely if anyone has anything to share or show.
I can't hear anything now.
Is that you, Sharon? No? Oh, it sounds like it might be a problem Sharon's end, perhaps. I don't...
Hi.
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, I've got two Sharons
You've got
now.
two Sharons.
Are you okay hearing Sharon, Raymond?
Yeah, I'm hearing fine.
Brilliant. Okay, it's not you. So that's one down. I think it might be Sharon Savati that's got the problem. But as long as you're okay as well, Sharon. Alison, were you inviting people to share their work if they wanted to?
Yes, please, if they'd like to.
Hillary.
Got a few people holding them up.
Oh, wow, look at that. Oh, gosh, that's beautiful. Wow, how good is that? Don't let it drip, though. It looks like it's still a bit wet. I love that.
Yeah, it is.
Have you thought of any? Have you got any words that might go with that, Hillary?
Got words on it. Spring, fresh, bright, pale.
Wow.
I enjoyed doing it anyway.
Oh, that is absolutely fantastic. I hope you might carry on and do some more when we finish.
Thanks, Alison.
Oh, it's lovely. Well done you. It's fantastic.
Also, Catherine, I think, wanted to share, Alison. Catherine Sims. Can we hear you, Catherine? Oh, you're on mute, Catherine.
Can you hear me?
There we go. Yes, we can.
Okay. I haven't got any paints, so I thought I would paint with words. So
Fantastic.
I've put all sorts of words onto the leaves of my orchid. So you probably won't be able to see because it's very, very tiny. Can you see anything?
Oh, yeah, that's beautiful. Oh, wow, aren't you clever? Would you mind reading them out for us? They're lovely.
Well, there's a bud on the orchid that's been coming out for so long, and I've put on around the outside expectation, anticipation, and joy. So I'm waiting for a bud to come out.
That is lovely. And it sums up spring, that as well, doesn't it? That kind of unfurling, you know.
And then on one of them I've put lamentation because it's dying. And then all L words: luster, late, light, litmus, lime, laurel, lost. So all things about the leaf actually is going to die.
I love litmus is particularly lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, strange. And then in a little leaf I've got moss and algae. So all sorts of funny words.
Oh, that's lovely. I think litmus in my head fits with moss really well somehow. You know how They say moss is a sign of clean air, don't they? It kind of, I think it soaks up pollutants, doesn't it, and stuff. So litmus somehow fits with that.
I don't know why it should, but it just seemed to go with that. Yes.
That's lovely. What a great idea as well. It's beautiful.
I won't give you any more.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Alison, I've had real fun. I've never done this before.
Hi, Sharon.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
look at
That's
those.
nice.
Oh, they're lovely.
That's
Oh,
lovely.
wow, Sharon. They're brilliant. If you've never done it before, you definitely need to keep going.
Yeah, I've used watercolours before, but I've never used acrylics like this before. So it was just real fun, you know, with
Wow.
the acrylics. So yeah, thanks.
Aw. It's a real pleasure. And there's a whole world of textures and marks that you can get into if you play around a bit.
Mm.
Honestly, you'll find you get absorbed before you know it.
Yes. Thank you.
Mm.
Shall I go next? Oh,
Oh, yes, please. Yes, please. Oh, Louise, those are lovely. Beautiful. Wow. Oh, that's delicate and beautiful. You've done a great job. You look like someone who paints usually. I can't hear anything, actually. Is Louise on mute?
Could you put her up full screen? I can't see it.
It's because Louise is on mute. If you unmute yourself, Louise, and then when you speak, you'll go.
okay, I'm back off mute. I don't know.
There we
That's
go.
it. Yeah, we can see you now.
I was just saying, I've just sort of gotten into painting a little bit, and I've never really used watercolour before, so I'm trying to learn a bit about watercolour. So
That's beautiful. Really lovely.
although I forgot to use cartridge paper, and this is printer paper.
It's fine though, isn't it? I mean, you'll play around with the paper thing. You'll find you'll come across a sort of thickness of paper that will suit you.
Yeah.
But you know, isn't it amazing? Even just with computer paper, it's beautiful. I think watercolor. It's so simple, and the transparency is just lovely, and it's just lovely. It's the perfect thing for flowers as well, I think.
I think the thing that I found the best is being able to use a pen that doesn't run.
Oh yes, brilliant.
Yeah.
Is that a waterproof marker?
It's just I don't know. Yeah, just a pen that said waterproof. Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And I had
You
some words.
could play around.
Words. So I had subtle, spine, and reaching.
Oh yes, please. Yes, please.
Did you hear them? Have I gone again?
Nice. Subtle,
Okay.
spine. What was the third one?
Reaching.
That's lovely. Reaching. Yeah.
Thank
That's
you.
beautiful. Subtle spine. Reaching. Thank you. That's really lovely. I hope you feel like you can sort of carry on and explore on your own after, you know, try out different textures and try out lots of sploshy techniques as well. Don't be afraid of it.
Thank you.
Time for one more,
Can
maybe?
I share? All right, can I share?
Yes, that's Carol, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hi, Carol.
I was trying out your scratchy leaf technique.
Oh yes.
So let's have a look. Oh, there we go.
Oh yes, look at that. Oh, that's beautiful. Now you're definitely a person that does watercolors normally, I think.
I have done in the past, yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love the way you've really got the sense of the leaf turning. You know, you've got the light hitting it, and the sort of.
And it's a long time since I've done any, so.
Oh,
yeah.
that's beautiful. It would be nice on a sunnier day. If, I mean, there's no sun here, but
Yeah.
on a sunnier day, you could explore what would happen if you had shadows as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, because actually that can really add a dimension too. You know, I couldn't really show that because there was no sun. That's beautiful. What a fantastic job you've done. I hope you carry on with it.
Thank you.
It's really lovely. Thank you.
This has been a really beautiful space. Is there anything from you, Alison or Susan, you wanted to do to wrap up the session?
Sorry, I just saw Victoria pop up then.
Oh.
Go on, Victoria, we can't resist.
Oh, I don't think you want to see my painting. How do I do this? Hang on, I can't quite find the. How do I show you my? Oh, can't find it.
What is it you're trying to do, Victoria?
Show you my scribbles.
Oh, on your screen?
Yes. Oh, share screen.
Yeah. So I may have set it up so that people can't. Let me just do it so that you can. Just a second.
I think Victoria just needs to put it in front of her face.
Do I?
That's it. That's it. A bit higher.
Oh,
it's
yeah. I see.
Embarrassing.
If you lift it a little bit higher, Victoria, there we go.
I went off message a bit.
Oh, that's fab. Could you lift it up a little? That's it. Lovely. Oh, those are very nice. I can see great textures.
Can't see it. So I had, for words, I had threadbare earth, puckered velvet, decayed, decomposing, jungle, fern, compost and wasteland.
Lovely. I particularly love compost. We didn't think of that. That's great.
Thank you.
We've just gone past 12 o'clock. Time has really flown by, hasn't it? When you're
definitely
fun.
Outrageous. Yeah.
Definitely educated. Yeah, thank you again so much for helping us do this, Alison and Susan. It's been an absolute joy and a pleasure. I have just in the chat box put the link into the next session, which is called The Rainbow and the Journey. Did either of you want to say just a line about what you're hoping for that session to let people know?
Sure.
We had thought about sort of introducing folded letters. They could be illustrated, again with lots of detail from the natural world. But we thought we wouldn't plan too heavily until we'd had this morning's session, because there's so many wonderful ideas here that we might be able to weave into the next. But yes, we will be looking at that whole idea of journeying.
Excellent. Okay, so I will just pop that in the link again.
Particular things you'd really like to look at, you could stick it in there. I think we might also investigate formats that encourage your thinking and your eye to literally take a journey. So we'll probably take a leaf out of some of the Japanese scrolls and things like that, you know, where very often there would be a very long, thin piece of paper. So you can't see it all at once. You have to move through it, which encourages you to take a bit of a journey in your brain. So we might explore formats a little bit as well.
Sounds super. Okay, so that event is ready for people to sign up to if they wanted to. So the link is in the chat. But we'll also share all of that, all of the videos, today's video that we've recorded, and any links from Alison and Susan in a follow-up email to everybody that's joined today. So nobody will miss out on anything at all. But yeah, thank you so much to everybody for joining us today. It's been an absolute joy. What a way to start our Tuesday and go into lunch with that lovely glow. Thank you ever so much, and we'll hope to see you next time. Okay,
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.